Hi everyone, and welcome back to Rough Rider, where every week I talk writing, self-publishing, and making it as an author. Or at least it was every week. I just made a big move across the country, and I'm finally settled in. Here I am in sunny Las Vegas now. But anyway, I am back, and what we're going to be talking about today is the idea of show, don't tell. The thing is, first-time authors get really preoccupied with the idea of show, don't tell. Basically, they're told that explaining things in narration is a mark of bad writing. What happens is people are taking a stylistic suggestion as a rule, which really isn't particularly helpful. So here's why show, don't tell isn't always the best writing advice. The first reason is that showing means writing more than you need to. So people define show, don't tell in slightly different ways, but here's how I take it. If you're gonna follow that rule, if you had a rude character, then you should only depict them being rude to others as a way to demonstrate that quality. So if you're following show, don't tell, you wouldn't use narration to explicitly say that so-and-so is rude. So you'd have to do it by them acting that out. Alternatively, you could use dialogue to make that point by having one character say to another, oh my god, like so-and-so is so rude. But if you strictly follow show, don't tell, you'd be committing like a mortal sin by ever just plainly stating that this person is a rude character. The problem is that if you're going to show like that, it can really easily cause you to go off on tangents. You're gonna be tempted to throw in extra scenes simply to demonstrate some sort of personal quality about a character or to explain their background. These are really gonna be filler scenes. It slows down the story, it makes it a longer novel than it even needs to be. And you could just as easily add these details in narration without having to add all of these extra filler scenes. It just takes up a lot of space and it bogs down your readers. Like here's an example. Let's say you want your reader to know that a certain side character of yours, let's call him Max. Max is a really defensive guy and you want your readers to know that. And maybe this is because of something that happened to him when he was younger. But keep in mind, he's not the protagonist, he's not even a point of view character. He shows up a few times and that's it. But if you're going to show and never tell, you would end up having to add all of these extra scenes just to show his background as to why he is defensive like this, even though he's just a side character. These scenes are just going to be clutter. You could just as easily convey that information in narration and never have to actually write a full scene about it. Like you could just say in the narration something like this: Max wasn't one to accept criticism. He carried himself like that kid who was the butt of mean jokes in middle school, the underdog who'd been permanently put on the defensive even after getting a master's degree while watching his childhood bullies work as janitors at the local burger joint. There you go. You got your point across. He's a defensive guy. It happened because he was bullied in school. That's it. That's all you needed. You told, you didn't show. But you got your point across without having to bog your reader down with all of this extra stuff. Because remember, we're talking about a minor character here. You could use flashbacks to depict backstory for maybe a main character, but you probably can't do that for a minor one. Unfortunately, these people who are sticklers for show, don't tell would really just waste their readers' time with gratuitous flashbacks. Also waste their own time, because you're turning minor points into full scenes, and you should have been focusing on the more important elements of the story. Now, my next reason why show, don't tell isn't always the best writing advice is that showing through dialogue has its limits. So you can use dialogue to explain things to the reader, but you can't always rely on that. Ultimately, you're writing a novel, not a screenplay, so you don't want it to be too dialogue heavy. It takes away opportunities to write some meaningful prose. It's also boring to have characters go back and forth for more than a few lines at a time. So sometimes you just have to break up your dialogue. You keep your reader's interest if you add in a paragraph or two every few lines. After every couple of quotes from the characters, then you throw in a paragraph of narration. You could elaborate on what a character said, you could give context to a line that they said, or you could even replace their verbal response entirely. But intermixing showing and telling rather than just showing alone is just a lot more interesting for the reader, at least when it comes to dialogue. Another problem with dialogue is you can't always use it to explain background information. I mean, if a character is just recounting their past to someone else, then sure, dialogue's appropriate. But if the information is meant only for the reader, then there's no reason for that character to talk to other characters about it. You'll just have to add dialogue to bring those subjects up. It's gonna sound forced, it's gonna sound unnatural, it's not gonna fit. It's gonna be like, well, why is this conversation here? Were they just using it to convey this when they didn't need to? The plot just doesn't always warrant that conversation taking place. So, another example. Maybe you want to explain to the reader why a certain character acts a certain way, but they're a private person and they just don't talk about their past a lot. We wouldn't want them telling another character their life story unless they've just gone through some dramatic personal change where they're suddenly okay with talking to people about that kind of stuff. Their insistence on privacy wouldn't let them have such a dialogue. It would prevent it. It's not possible. It would violate the character. This is when telling works better than showing. You're going to end up staying true to that private character who doesn't talk about themselves without adding unnecessary dialogue that really contradicts their character. Like in one of my sci-fi short stories, Speak No Evil, the main character Dan, he works for Ogle, which is basically like Google. It's like a big tech tech, like really into censorship, that whole kind of thing. He's been monitoring the online activity of someone named Ava. Over time, he's really like caught feels for her, but he's spying on her basically, and he's been chatting with her, and she doesn't know who he really is. There's multiple scenes with them exchanging messages. He's told her some information about himself, but not everything. Most importantly, the fact that he works for this evil mega corporation and is trying to shut her down. So he's in a moral dilemma here. But the reader's supposed to know the truth, but Ava is not. And that information just can't be given through dialogue. I had to tell the reader. I didn't really have a choice. And convey that through the scene's narration rather than the dialogue itself. It just made more sense. And you're gonna find that you run into similar situations where just telling makes more sense than showing. And here's another reason why show don't tell isn't always the best writing advice, which is that really it is just a suggestion, it's not a rule. You really gotta keep that in mind. In general, it is better to convey information through characters' words and behavior if you can. Maybe not better, it's more effective that way. However, breaking away from that stylistic approach does not instantly turn good writing into bad writing. There are so many new authors on social media who are just sitting there posting and asking, like, did this one sentence of telling just make me into a bad writer? Of course it doesn't. Most replies to that post are probably gonna tell them that they're a heretic and they need to really revise everything that they're doing. I feel like it just leads to more people just scrapping their personal style for the sake of what they're told is proper writing. And really, I think that indie authors should focus more on sounding like themselves and not like someone else. If you're worried about your writing being bad, take a look at the structure and the flow of your plot, the relatability or the complexity of your characters. Look at your grammar, look at your punctuation, look at your spelling. Bad writing is the writing that ignores the importance of those elements in favor of minor questions of style. And stylistic suggestions like show, don't tell really don't have that much significance when you're trying to judge the quality of someone's writing. If they always tell and never show, then okay, fine, maybe you should reevaluate. But if they can balance the shows and the tells in a voice that's really theirs, I don't think there's any reason to criticize that. Anyway, the point is, show don't tell doesn't always make your book better. And if you decide that you want to write more like you than writing like someone else, understand that these style rules are not rules, they're suggestions. If it works for you, great. If it doesn't, okay, fine, it doesn't. Anyway, my point is, write like yourselves. That's what I really think you should be doing. Anyway, next week, because I am gonna go weekly again, I'm gonna be talking about something similar. I'm just gonna be talking about how generally most of these writing rules are made to be broken. If you liked this video, hopefully you will like next week's. Anyway, if you found this helpful, or if you found it interesting, or if you really disagree with me and you think I am a heretic for saying that it doesn't matter if you tell instead of show, please say so and write your comment below. But anyway, please like and subscribe, follow me on social media, and as always, thank you for watching. God bless.